Hi, and welcome back to Plastic Models by a Regular Dude and Plastic Models for Beginners. Back to basics with the Tamiya 148 scale Grumman F4F-4 Wildcat. This is part number 4. So we left off last time with the landing gear being assembled and the drop tanks and some other items, but that was where we left off. Those have been done. They are ready to go. The landing gear is also ready to go. So there was a few parts I needed to glue on. Now, way up here in step 1, I forgot to glue the arresting hook in. So I went ahead and did that, cut that off, and put that in place. On step 8 is where the next step we're going to do. It shows to install the drop tanks and the gear. However, I'm not going to do that right now. What I want to do is wait till I have everything painted before I install that. So the other part I need to install is B7, which is the Pitot Tube. And I've cut it off and cleaned it up for the most part. There's a pretty good seam line on this one, so you'll have to pay particular attention to it, especially on this outside edge, so it doesn't show up too much once it's painted. We'll glue that in place. What I need to do, because of that seam, is I'm going to have to trim that up on the part that actually goes into the wing, because it's making it hard to get it to fit into the wing. Let's see how that works. There we go, that's better. Make sure it is level. Put some cement on there. Make sure it's firmly in place. Okay. Okay, so that's good. All right, so the other part that needs to be, so that's all we'll do on step 8. We'll put this stuff on after everything's been painted. So next thing is the propeller, which I've already glued the shaft in, which is A6. We'll hold off on that as well. Basically get it ready for primer by putting in one of my clamps. Okay, and then I've also got the landing gear doors. Those are ready for primer as well. Those actually glue on here on the landing gear, but I'm not going to do that until after I get it painted. Same with this part right here, which covers the landing gear in the middle, and the landing gear door is kind of attached to it. But what I'm going to do with that is using a piece of blue tack on the end of a toothpick, so that's ready to be painted. So we'll set that aside so it's ready. And then let's see, what else do we have? So we have the Gunsight needs to be painted. So what we'll do there, okay, since the bottom part is the part that that's attached to the sprue, is a part that goes through the hole here, I'm going to leave it in place here to paint. And I'm just going to cut it off to make it a little easier to hold, we'll paint that up. Okay, so I've got some paint, got my brush, making sure my light is in a way that I can see, because in the center here, you can see this is supposed to be left clear. Everything's supposed to be black around it. So that's going to take a little bit of using a light reflection, that way I can see. So I'm going to have to, for this, I'm going to use my other black paint, which is Vallejo Model Color Black. I've already shaken it up, and I'll put a little bit on here. The reason I'm using this is I can make this a little bit thicker than the other. Because that is clear, it doesn't seem to cover as well. So I've got that, and then some Vallejo thinner that I've put in a little dropper bottle. I'm just going to add one drop there to kind of thin it up just a little bit. I'll use one of my stir brushes for this, not my good brush that I'm actually going to paint with. This is a little bit thicker than the Model Air. Okay, so let's see what we got here. Let's see if this works a little better. Yeah, see, that's a lot more opaque. I want to be really careful around these edges. I'm using my light to highlight the difference between the lens and the framework around the lens. You probably can't see it because of the angle of the camera, but the way I'm tilting it, I'm seeing a nice delineation between the actual Gunsight lens and the framework. Okay, then I'll do the edge here. All right, just to get the coverage a little bit better, I'm going to use the next size larger brush. And when painting something like this clear stuff, if it looks like it's not covered enough, let it dry. Which paint like this dries really quick anyway. Let it dry and then give it another coat and you'll be good. Alright, so that looks pretty good. Alright, so we'll set that aside to dry. Okay, so I'm going to glue the antenna here, A19. I'll glue that in place, and then I'm going to start working on the canopy stuff. Now, as you can see, I've got the plane on this stand that I talked about early on, and again, that's not something that is necessary, but if you can get a hold of one, it is pretty handy. It's especially handy when you're doing stuff, when you're moving the plane around a lot, stuff like that. It keeps you from breaking off these small parts. That's the main reason I got it, because on one of my aircraft it had a lot of little small antenna like stuff and some photo etch. There was a possibility I could break it off, so I wanted to make sure that I had some way to support it without messing anything up. It also comes in handy with decals and stuff, but by no means is it necessary. So the next part I want to install is A19, the antenna. So just cut that off. A20, that is not used in this kit. I think it's it looks like an antenna as well, but it's probably for a different version. I'm sure this kit shares sprues with other Tamiya kits, whether it be the F4F or the F4F or whatever, but anyway, it's not used. I double checked the instructions and it's not used for anything. So I'll just get this antenna cleaned up here. Sometimes I do not install the antennas before painting, but in this case I am. And it goes right there. So it's supposed to be at a forward angle, so just make sure it's parallel with the rudder, the tail, and make sure it's bottomed out properly. So there's that. So with that, I'm going to set this aside so I can start working on the canopies. Okay, I've got the parts cut off and cleaned up. You've seen me do it a dozen times, so there's no sense in watching it again. So this is where the Edward masks come in handy. Now, these, I use this toothpick here so it won't scratch. But these frames are pretty pronounced. So if a person wanted to make masks for these things with just masking tape, it wouldn't be hard to do, because you just press it down in place, especially if you're using something that's just slightly, just a little bit translucent, like say, let me show you. And there's plenty of tutorials on YouTube on how to do this. But as you can see, you can still see the framework there. And then you would just use your knife and carefully cut along the edge. You press your knife up against the raised detail of the framework, and then just follow it down and go around each panel, and you'd have yourself a nice nice mask for your canopy. But I wanted to use these and also demonstrate how to use them for beginning modelers. So they're really quite simple. And Edward makes a nice, I mean, there's other brands, and you know, all these brands do pretty much the same thing as far as how they're laid out and packaged. Okay, now this has all kinds of masks in it, not just for the glass. So for instance, you can see here, it shows you, you can barely make these things out, but they're laid out like this, and it gives you masks for the wheels, for the glass underneath the aircraft, for underneath here where these lights are, these landing lights or whatever they are right there. So you have a wide range of masks that are useful for this kit. See also the tail. In this case, I'm going to be hand painting all that stuff, so it's not really necessary to do all that. So I'm just going to use for the canopy itself. Okay, what I've done here is I peeled off the negative part of it, the part that's not being used for the masking. And the reason I did that is so you can kind of see what it looks like and what I'm doing here. So the first thing that I want to get is now obviously some of these I'm not going to, well, most of them I'm not, well, some of them I'm not going to be using. I'm just using only for the canopy. So the first part I need, and it's kind of laid out the way the canopy is laid out. So this part here, I've got it upside down. Okay, so this part here is for here. So we'll do that one first. Just line it up. And if it doesn't look like it's quite lined up, then just peel it back off. And I find for myself it's easier to use angular stuff instead of the curved portions to get it lined up. For instance, these two corners fit those and one side, and these are generally really well cut. So if you get one side lined up, and if it looks like it's a little bit off, split the difference. But the nice thing is when you get them in position, you can kind of slide them around a little bit and then just press it in place like that. And it should be nice and consistently shaded, for lack of a better term. you shouldn't have a lighter spot along the edge. It tells you you're up on the side. So we got that one. Then for the top part here, it's 2 pieces. Now this is probably going to take a little bit of video time, but the reason I want to make sure that you see what's going on. If you use a knife or metal, anything metal, make sure you're careful and don't scratch the plastic, especially where it's supposed to be clear. The painted part, if you scratch that, it's not as big a deal. See, that fits on there pretty good. Okay, on this one here, in order to get it to line up properly along the back edge, you need to make a little crease. So just do that. Kind of mash the crease into place, that way it'll line it up along the back edge here. Just like that. Then we can take the other side. Sure that looks lined up. Like that. And if you find a part, generally these are really good. It's the curved, it's these compound curves that kind of get tricky, and you need to really make sure those are in place. And if you ever have a part that looks like it's just not, like it's too far or something like that, you can trim it off. Okay, so there's that one. Then got this one here, which fits on the side, and again using the straight edges. That one dropped right into place. Okay, and then this one here, same thing, other side. First couple of times you do these things, it can be quite intimidating, and you know, you get scared about, you know, messing up the mask or whatever. Keep in mind, this is just like masking tape, like Tamiya masking tape, so it's pretty tough. The chances of messing it up, it's pretty slim, and the fact that it's like you can remove it and stick it back into place, because it doesn't have to be really super hard, rock solid in place. It's just got to mask what you don't want to spray. And there we go. That one looks good there. All right, so that's that. So doing these is exactly the same thing. I'm not going to show you all this just because of the simplicity of it, and I don't want it to get monotonous. But I am going to come back to do the top, show you how I'm doing the top. Okay, for the tops, as you can see, these are kind of U-shaped. Why they did that, I don't know, but they did. So here's what we're going to do. You make sure you just follow the diagram, showing you how to do it. Which ones go where. Put it in place. Make sure it's lined up with both edges. Like that. Make sure it's mashed down. Looks like the top right here is narrower than the bottom. So this is the way they've opted to do it. And it's a pretty good idea. But then I'll show you how I deal with gives you a little bit of flexibility so you can line it up properly. There and there. Okay, so there you have it. So what do you do about the center part? You can either cut off a part of this or just use a piece of Tamiya or whatever masking tape you have. Kind of eyeball it. And make a part to cover the top. And if you do like I did, and you make it a little too short, it's no big deal. Just cut another little piece. And voila, there you go. Okay, that's all there is to it. So I'm going to do that last part, and then we'll be ready to start thinking about paint. All right, so as you can see, I have started on some of the masking and stuff. I want to show you real quick. I am going to be using the Vallejo Putty to get around the these little lower windows. There's a gap around the framework, so I need to get that filled in. So all I'm doing is just putting a little bit on a toothpick and filling it in like that, and then taking a little bit of water on my finger. I'll just wipe it off like that. Looks kind of grody, but once it's painted, it'll be really nice. A little more water. Like that. Use this paper towel. And then once it dries, that little bit right there, actually I don't have to wait for it to dry. just like that. So those are filled in. I put those bits of masking on there, and then I've got masking here for around the engine. I've started in with masking underneath the landing gear here. And basically all I'm doing is just getting some foam. Now, I don't know if you guys are noticing this, but I got a horrible shadow here. I don't know why all of a sudden I seem to be having a problem with it, but sorry, moving that around so it'll maybe won't be so bad. But I'm gonna change up my camera mount, because for some reason it's just suddenly started being dumb, and I don't like that shadow across there. So I'm going to try something different. So in my next round of videos for the painting of this kit, hopefully it'll be a little nicer. Now I've rounded off these corners here of this foam. And just make sure it's not overlapping the edge here. Make sure it's all punched in all the way around. Like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing in the cockpit, but I'm going to use a piece of tape on this back headrest part here. Put a piece of masking tape there, put a piece of masking or foam in there. I've got these parts back here that I showed that are ready for primer. And I was going to glue these on, but I need to spray this here because this is supposed to be the same color as the fuselage according to the few references that I have. So I need to paint that. So that's why I'm going to stuff that and put the tape in there. Get that sprayed, and I'm going to prime the whole thing. Then using my upper fuselage color, I'll spray that. Then I will glue the canopy, the windscreen and the canopy in place. Then I can continue painting, and that will already be painted. And and obviously I want to remember to put the Gunsight in there. So I'm going to start getting that ready. I've got the propeller ready, got this part ready. Landing gear is already done. These parts here, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to hold them right there where it goes into the fuselage. So those will be ready for paint, or primer first. Like that. And then I'm going to put some masking tape on the inside here, make sure those are covered up, and the inside of this, then I can spray that as well. So with that, I'm going to end, because that pretty much ends primary construction. The only construction left will be post-paint construction. So with that, I'm going to call this one quits, and thank you for joining me here again on Plastic Models by a Regular Dude and the Back to Basics Part 4 with the F4F-4 in 1/48 scale by Tamiya. So as always, any questions, comments, suggestions, anything like that, please put them in the comments section down below, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can on those. So until next time, I will see you all later.